France, August 1944. Dust hangs thick over a wheat field outside Argentan. Inside the cramped fighting compartment of Panther No. 401, Oberfeldwebel Klaus Dietrich wipes sweat from his brow. Through his commander's periscope, he scans the rolling countryside. The late summer sun paints everything gold, peaceful almost, if not for the distant rumble of artillery. His crew has been at war for 3 years. They've seen the steppes of Russia, the mountains of Italy, and now the hedgerows of France. They know their business. Movement, 2 o'clock, his gunner, Unteroffizier Werner Vogel, reports calmly. American armor, ridgeline. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Klaus adjusts his optics. There, nearly 1,800 meters away, a line of Shermans emerges from a tree line. At this distance, they're little more than dark shapes against the horizon. Klaus allows himself a thin smile. 1,800 meters. The Americans would need to close to at least 800 before their pathetic 75mm guns could even scratch his Panther's frontal armor. By then, his own 75mm KWK-42 would have turned half of them into burning scrap. Range, he asks, more from habit than concern. 1,850 meters, had Oberfeldwebel. We wait. Let them come closer. But the Shermans don't advance. They stop, hull down behind the ridge. Klaus frowns. Strange. Usually the Americans push forward aggressively, relying on their numbers and air support. These are sitting still, almost as if the world explodes. A tremendous impact rocks the Panther. Metal screams. The interior fills with the acrid smell of penetrated armor. Klaus's ears ring. For a moment, time stops. Someone is shouting, but the words make no sense. His mind refuses to process what just happened. They were hit from nearly 2 kilometers away. Impossible. Raus! Raus! Abandon tank! His driver screams. Klaus looks down. A fist-sized hole has punched clean through the turret side, exactly where the ammunition racks would be if they were positioned differently. Smoke begins to curl upward. His training takes over. Out! Everyone out! Now! The crew tumbles from the hatches. Behind them, 3 more Panthers in their platoon are already burning, struck by shells that should have never reached them, fired by guns that shouldn't have the power to penetrate his Panther. As Klaus runs for the tree line, he glances back. The Shermans on that distant ridge haven't moved. They're still there, barrels elevated slightly, methodically engaging targets that their intelligence officers had assured them were out of American gun range. For the first time in his career, Klaus Dietrich understands what it means to be outranged by an opponent you thought inferior. The Americans, it seems, have learned something new. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. To understand how this moment arrived, how German confidence turned to confusion on a French hillside in 1944, we must go back 3 years. Back to when the Panzer was king, and the world trembled at the sound of German tank treads on cobblestones. September 1941. The plains of Ukraine stretch endlessly under a late summer sky. Panzer Group 2 rolls east like an iron tide. Hauptmann Friedrich Weber stands in the commander's cupola of his Panzer IV, wind whipping his face. Around him, dozens of tanks advance in perfect formation. The coordination is beautiful, almost balletic. Infantry follows in half-tracks. Stukas circle overhead. Artillery rumbles behind. This is Bewegungskrieg, the war of movement, and Germany has perfected it. They encounter a Soviet T-34 battalion near Bryansk. The battle is brief. German tank commanders, trained for years in target acquisition and fire discipline, make quick work of the Soviet armor. Weber watches as his company knocks out 12 T-34s in under 10 minutes. The Soviets fight bravely but clumsily, their crews rushing shots, their tactics uncoordinated. One T-34 manages to score a hit on Weber's Panzer IV. The shell ricochets off the frontal armor with a shower of sparks.
Weber's gunner calmly returns fire. The T-34 explodes. This is the reality of 1941. German armor doesn't just win battles, it dominates them. Superior optics, better crew training, excellent radio communication, tactical doctrine refined through years of preparation. The Panzer Force is the most formidable armored formation the world has ever seen. Officers like Weber believe, with reason, that no tank on Earth can match them in open combat. But the Americans aren't in the war yet, and when they arrive, they'll bring something different. Not immediately better, but different. And in war, adaptation often trumps perfection. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns. The United States, its industrial might until now focused on supplying Britain and the Soviets, suddenly pivots to total war. In Detroit, at the massive tank arsenal, engineers receive new orders. Maximum production, now. The M4 Sherman medium tank is already in prototype stage. It's not designed to fight Tigers or Panthers because those tanks don't exist yet. It's designed around American strategic thinking, reliability, ease of manufacture, mechanical simplicity. The 75mm M3 gun mounted in the turret can handle anything the Germans or Japanese currently field. The armor is adequate. The engine, a radial aircraft power plant, is proven and dependable. Most importantly, the Sherman can be produced in staggering numbers. Where German industry struggles to manufacture a few dozen Panthers per month, American factories will eventually churn out thousands of Shermans. This is America's advantage. Not the perfect tank, but the perfect system. By early 1943, Shermans are fighting in North Africa. That's where the first cracks in American confidence appear. Tunisia, February 1943. Lieutenant Robert "Bobby" Crawford crouches in his Sherman's turret scanning the rocky terrain. His crew is green, fresh from training in Georgia. They've never seen combat. Around them, the desert is eerily quiet. Then, from a ridgeline 2,000 yards away, German guns open fire. Crawford doesn't even see the tank that kills the Sherman next to his. One moment it's there, the next it's a fireball. His driver is screaming into the intercom, "Back up! Back up!" But before they can move, a shell strikes their frontal armor. The impact is tremendous. The shell doesn't penetrate, but the force rocks the 30-ton vehicle like a toy. Crawford tastes blood in his mouth. "We can't hurt them from here," his gunner Corporal James Mitchell shouts. "They're too far." This becomes the pattern. German tanks, particularly the new Tigers and Panthers, can engage American armor from distances where return fire is impossible. The Sherman's 75mm gun, excellent against fortifications and infantry, simply lacks the velocity and penetration to threaten modern German armor beyond 600 or 700 yards. The Germans, meanwhile, can kill Shermans from 1,500 yards or more. At Kasserine Pass, this imbalance becomes catastrophic. American tank battalions are mauled. Experienced German commanders, many of them veterans of the Eastern Front, coordinate combined arms attacks that shred inexperienced American units. It's not just about the tanks, it's about doctrine, training, experience. But the hardware gap certainly doesn't help. Bobby Crawford survives Kasserine. His battalion doesn't. Of 42 Shermans that entered the battle, only 11 escape. He spends 2 days in a field hospital, nursing a concussion and second-degree burns. The doctors tell him he's lucky. He doesn't feel lucky. He feels outgunned.
Back in the United States, after-action reports from North Africa pile up on desks at the Ordnance Department. The message is clear and consistent. The Sherman needs a more powerful gun. Officers debate solutions. Some advocate for a completely new tank. Others argue that America's production capacity is already fully committed to the Sherman. Retooling would cost months, maybe years. A compromise emerges. What if they could upgrade the existing Sherman with a better gun without requiring a complete redesign? At Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, Colonel Howard Mitchell oversees a team of engineers examining this exact problem. They need more penetration, more muzzle velocity,
But they can't make the gun so heavy that it unbalances the Sherman's turret. They can't make it so long that it becomes unwieldy in close terrain. And they absolutely cannot require modifications so extensive that production slows down. The solution comes from an unexpected source, an anti-aircraft gun. The 3-inch M5 gun, designed to shoot down aircraft, has excellent ballistic properties: high velocity, flat trajectory, good penetration. Engineers begin adapting it for tank use. They shorten it slightly, modify the recoil mechanism, redesign the ammunition storage. The result is the 76mm M1 gun. On paper, it's impressive. At 1,000 yards, firing M62 armor-piercing ammunition, it can penetrate 120 millimeters of steel plate at 30 degrees. That's enough to threaten a Panther's frontal armor under the right conditions. More importantly, its higher muzzle velocity gives it effective range far beyond the old 75mm. But theory and battlefield reality are different things. The gun needs testing. It needs crews trained to use it. It needs commanders willing to trust it. June 1944, Normandy invasion. The first 76mm armed Shermans begin arriving in France. Not many, just a few dozen scattered among the thousands of 75mm variants. Most crews have never seen the new gun, much less fired it. Logistics officers complain about having to supply 2 different types of ammunition. Some commanders question whether the upgrade is worth the complications. Staff Sergeant Thomas Brennan receives one of the first 76mm Shermans in late July. His crew examines it with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The gun barrel is noticeably longer, extending several feet beyond the old 75mm. The muzzle brake at the end looks different. Inside, the ammunition racks have been reconfigured. "Think it'll actually work?" his gunner, Corporal Vincent O'Reilly, asks. Tommy shrugs. "Better than what we had. Can't kill a Panther from the front with a 75 unless you're point blank. Maybe this gives us a chance." They get their answers sooner than expected. Late July 1944. The bocage country of Normandy is a nightmare of narrow lanes and thick hedgerows. Perfect ambush terrain. German tanks can hide behind centuries-old earthen walls topped with dense vegetation, waiting for American columns to stumble into kill zones. The Sherman's numerical advantage means little when only 1 or 2 tanks can engage at a time in these confined spaces. Tommy Brennan's platoon advances along a sunken road. Trees form a canopy overhead. It's claustrophobic, tense. Every turn could hide a Panther or an 88mm anti-tank gun. His driver, Private First Class Daniel Murphy, navigates carefully, watching for mines. "Contact front," someone shouts over the radio. Ahead, a Panther has emerged from behind a hedgerow, 700 yards. The German tank is hauled down, only its turret visible. Its gun is already traversing toward the American column. Tommy's training takes over. "Gunner, target tank 700. O'Reilly already has it in his sights. Identified. "Fire!" The 76mm gun roars. The shell crosses the distance in under a second. Through his periscope, Tommy sees the impact. The shell strikes the Panther's frontal armor and punches clean through. Smoke billows from the hatches. The German tank doesn't return fire. Tommy stares in disbelief. They just penetrated a Panther's frontal armor at 700 yards. The old 75mm couldn't have done that from half the distance. "Holy shit," O'Reilly breathes. "It actually works." Word spreads through the division that night. The new long-barreled Shermans can fight Panthers on something approaching equal terms. Crews who receive the 76mm variants report increased confidence. For the first time since landing in France, American tankers feel like they have a weapon that can answer German armor. But the true revelation is still to come, because while American crews are discovering they can engage Panthers at 700 yards, nobody yet realizes just how far the 76mm gun can reach under the right conditions. In Germany, intelligence officers puzzle over reports from the front. American tanks are suddenly penetrating armor that should have been proof against their weapons. Initial assessments blame British Fireflies, Shermans mounting the powerful 17-pounder gun. But photographic reconnaissance and captured equipment tell a different story. These are American modifications. The Yankees have upgraded their Shermans. General Major Ernst Hoffmann reviews the reports at Panzer headquarters. He's a veteran of the Eastern Front, a careful, methodical officer. The pattern in the data troubles him. American penetrations are occurring at increasingly long ranges, not just 700 or 800 meters, but 1,000, sometimes more. This shouldn't be possible with the 75mm gun they've studied extensively. But if the Americans have fielded a new weapon, "What are our crews reporting?" he asks his intelligence officer. "Confusion, Herr General. They engage what they believe are standard Shermans at normal combat ranges and suffer unexpected penetrations. Some report being hit from distances they thought safe." Hoffmann frowns. Thought safe is a dangerous phrase in war. Assumptions kill soldiers. He orders new engagement protocols. Panzer commanders are instructed to treat all Shermans as potentially dangerous at extended ranges. Don't assume the old rules still apply. But information travels slowly in a retreating army. Many crews never receive the updated intelligence. They continue to operate under assumptions formed in 1943, when the Sherman's 75mm gun was well understood and easily countered. Those assumptions are about to become lethal.
August 1944. The breakout from Normandy is underway. Operation Cobra has shattered the German front. American armor pours through the gap, racing east toward the Seine. German forces attempt to counterattack to seal the breach, but they're operating with depleted units and dwindling fuel supplies. The 3rd Armored Division receives a batch of new 76mm Shermans. Among them is a tank commanded by Staff Sergeant William "Billy" Kowalski, a Chicago kid who worked in his father's machine shop before the war. His gunner, Corporal Frank Rossi, used to hunt deer in the mountains of Pennsylvania. That experience with long-range shooting is about to become extremely valuable. Their orders are simple. Advance to a ridge overlooking the town of Argentan. Establish observation. Engage targets of opportunity. They reach the ridgeline just after dawn. The visibility is perfect. Clear skies, morning sun at their backs. Kowalski scans the valley below with his binoculars. There, on the opposite ridge, nearly 2 kilometers away, he spots movement. German armor. Panthers, at least 4 of them, possibly more in the tree line. "Frank, you see those Panthers?" Rossi peers through his gun sight. "Yeah, I see 'em. Jesus, they're far though. That's got to be a mile, maybe more." Kowalski does the math in his head. 1,800 meters, give or take. No American tank has ever engaged effectively at that range. The old 75mm would be useless. Even with the 76mm, this would be pushing the absolute limits of the weapon system. But the conditions are ideal. Stationary target, no wind, perfect light. Can you hit them? Rossi adjusts his sight, calculating elevation. He's done this before, in a different context. Long shots on deer at 600-700 yards. Different weapon, but the principles are the same. Lead the target, account for drop, steady, squeeze. I can try. Do it. The 76mm gun elevates. Rossi takes a breath, holds it, and squeezes the trigger. The gun roars. The shell arcs across the valley. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, on the distant ridge, one of the Panthers erupts in flames. Dead hit. At 1,800 meters, the German crews never saw it coming. At that distance, they didn't even consider the possibility of being engaged. One moment, they were safely out of range. The next, their platoon leader's tank was burning. Panic spreads. The remaining Panthers begin to move, trying to relocate, but Kowalski's platoon has them ranged now.
Over the next 10 minutes, 3 more Panthers are destroyed or disabled. When the firing stops, Kowalski radios back to battalion. Targets destroyed. Range approximately 1,800 meters. There's a long pause. Then, say again your engagement range? 1,800 meters confirmed. Another pause. Understood. Good shooting. That night, the story spreads through the division. Some crews don't believe it. 1,800 meters? That's over a mile. Nobody shoots tanks at that range. But the wreckage is there, photographed, documented. The 76mm gun, under ideal conditions with skilled crews, can reach out and kill Panthers at distances the Germans never considered possible. The tactical implications are staggering. For the first time in the war, American tankers have a range advantage over German armor. Not always, not in every situation, but when terrain and visibility allow, a well-positioned 76mm Sherman can dominate the battlefield. The hunter, so long the hunted, has learned to strike from the shadows. And the Germans, confident in their technical superiority, are only beginning to realize what this means.
The morning after Billy Kowalski's mile-long shot, officers from V Corps headquarters arrive at the 3rd Armored Division command post. They want confirmation. They want measurements. They want to understand exactly what happened on that ridge overlooking Argentan. A major from Ordnance pulls Kowalski aside for debriefing. "Walk me through it, Sergeant. Every detail." Kowalski describes the setup, the perfect visibility, the stationary targets, Frank Rossi's experience with long-range shooting, the careful calculation of elevation. The major takes notes, asks technical questions about ammunition type, barrel wear, atmospheric conditions. "You understand what this means," the major finally says. "If we can train crews to engage at these ranges consistently, we change the entire tactical picture." But consistency is the challenge. Kowalski's shot required ideal conditions that rarely exist on a fluid battlefield. Still, the potential is there. American tank commanders begin receiving new guidance. Under the right circumstances, with proper training and conditions, the 76mm Sherman can reach out beyond anything the Germans expect. 3 days later, near the town of Ikuche, another long-range engagement occurs. This time, it's Sergeant Leonard Walsh's crew, positioned on high ground overlooking a crossroads. German armor is attempting to retreat through the valley below. Walsh's gunner, Corporal Peter Corporal Peter Huffman, a farmer's son from Iowa, has been practicing long-range gunnery since receiving the 76mm variant. The Panthers are moving, which complicates things. Walsh calculates lead time, estimates speed. 1,500 meters, he tells Hoffman. Lead them by 3 tank lengths. Hoffman adjusts, fires. The first shell falls short, kicking up dirt behind the moving Panther. He adjusts elevation slightly, leads a bit more. Second shot. This one connects with the Panther's side armor as it turns to navigate the road. The German tank lurches to a halt, smoke pouring from the engine compartment. The other Panthers in the column immediately accelerate, trying to escape the ambush they can't even locate. 2 more are hit before they reach cover. Walsh's platoon doesn't lose a single tank. They engaged from a range where German return fire was impossible. Reports like this flood into tactical headquarters throughout August. The 76mm Sherman, when used properly, has become a sniper weapon. Not every crew can replicate Kowalski's extraordinary first shot, but many are achieving consistent hits at 1,200 to 1,500 meters, ranges that 6 months ago would have seemed fantastical. German tank commanders, meanwhile, are struggling to adapt to a reality that contradicts years of experience. Their tactical doctrine, their engagement ranges, their entire understanding of the battlefield is built on assumptions that no longer hold. American tanks were supposed to be inferior. Their guns were supposed to be weak. Engaging them from long range was supposed to be safe. Oberst Dietrich Miller commands what remains of the 116th Panzer Division. His formation has been in continuous combat since Normandy, worn down by attrition, fuel shortages,
And now, this mysterious American capability. He reads after-action reports from surviving crews with growing concern. They're hitting us from distances we thought impossible, one platoon leader reports. By the time we locate them and return fire, we've already lost tanks. Mueller requests updated intelligence from division headquarters. What exactly has changed with American armor? The response is vague. Enemy appears to have fielded improved anti-tank weapons. Exact specifications unknown. Recommend increased caution at all engagement ranges. Increased caution. Mueller almost laughs. His division is down to 30 operational tanks. Fuel is so scarce they're rationing movement. Allied fighter bombers make daytime operations suicidal. And now American tanks can kill Panthers from ranges that were supposed to be sanctuary.
Caution won't save them. Nothing will save them except a miracle. And Mueller stopped believing in miracles somewhere around Caen. By September, the front has collapsed. German forces retreat toward the west wall, the Siegfried Line fortifications along the German border. The 76mm Sherman follows them, now standard equipment in most American armored divisions. Production has ramped up. Training emphasizes long-range gunnery. Crews share techniques, compare notes on elevation adjustments and lead calculations. Lieutenant David Hartman, commanding a platoon in the 4th Armored Division, conducts impromptu training sessions whenever his unit has downtime. His crews practice on abandoned German vehicles, measuring distances, recording hits and misses, building expertise through repetition. The key is understanding your weapon, Hartman tells his gunners. The 76 isn't forgiving, but if you know its capabilities, respect its limitations, you can do things that seem impossible. His platoon develops a reputation. Other units request their support when difficult targets need engaging. Hartman's crews can consistently hit at 1,400 meters, sometimes further when conditions allow. They've stopped thinking of the Sherman as inferior. It's different from a Panther, yes. Less armor, less weight. But with the 76mm gun and proper tactics, it's competitive, sometimes superior. The Germans, by contrast, are losing their edge in every category that matters. Their tanks are still individually superior in armor and firepower. A Tiger or King Tiger in a direct duel will usually win against a Sherman. But direct duels are increasingly rare. American tactics have evolved. Why duel when you can ambush? Why charge when you can engage from high ground at ranges where return fire is ineffective? And there's the industrial reality. For every German tank destroyed, replacement is uncertain. American losses are replaced within days. The Sherman's great advantage was always quantity, but now it has quality too. Not perfect quality, but good enough. And good enough, multiplied by thousands, becomes overwhelming. Near the German border in late September, Oberleutnant Hans Weber, son of Hauptmann Friedrich Weber, who fought in Russia 3 years ago, commands a Tiger tank in a depleted Panzer battalion. They're dug in along the Siegfried Line, hull-down positions with excellent fields of fire. Weber has confidence in his vehicle. The Tiger's 88mm gun is still fearsome. Its armor is still formidable. If the Americans come, they'll pay dearly. But the Americans don't come the way Weber expects. Instead of charging across open ground, they establish firing positions on distant ridgelines. Sherman after Sherman, hull down, only turrets visible. Weber estimates the range at 1,600 meters, too far for accurate fire from his position, though his 88mm could reach that distance. He decides to wait. Let them advance. They don't advance. They just start shooting. The first impacts are ranging shots, falling short or overshooting. Then they find the range. Shells begin landing around Weber's position with uncomfortable accuracy. One strikes the concrete fortification next to his Tiger, showering the tank with debris. Another hits the ground 3 meters in front, ricocheting over the turret. "They're targeting us from there?" his gunner asks, incredulous. "That's impossible range for a Sherman." Weber watches through his periscope as more muzzle flashes appear along the American ridgeline.
A dozen Shermans, maybe more, all firing methodically at his position. The shells keep coming. Most miss, but it only takes one, and they're improving with each salvo. Back up. We're relocating. As his Tiger reverses into cover, Weber sees another German tank, a Panther from the neighboring company, take a direct hit. The shell penetrates the turret front. The Panther's ammunition cooks off in a spectacular explosion. Weber's Tiger reaches cover just as another shell impacts where they had been positioned seconds before. That night, Weber's company commander assembles the surviving crews. New orders from division. We avoid engagement with American armor beyond 1,000 meters. We do not expose ourselves to long-range fire. We use prepared positions and wait for them to close in within effective range.
It's a defensive doctrine, reactive rather than aggressive. Everything Panzer tactics were supposed to avoid. But what choice do they have? The Americans have learned to use distance as a weapon. Close-range battles favor German armor, so the Americans simply don't fight close-range battles anymore. They stand off, pound German positions from range, bring up infantry and artillery to exploit any weakness. The panzer force that terrorized Europe for 4 years has been reduced to a defensive screen, husbanding its dwindling strength, hoping to survive another day. In October, American forces reach Aachen, the first major German city to fall. The fighting is brutal. Urban combat where the 76mm gun's range advantage means little. Buildings become fortifications. Every street is contested. German defenders, including veteran panzer crews fighting as infantry, mount fierce resistance. But even here, the improved Sherman proves its worth. Staff Sergeant Anthony Rizzo's tank supports infantry clearing a city block near the Cathedral District. A Panther appears at the end of the street, 400 meters away. Close range by recent standards, but the confined space makes maneuvering difficult. Rizzo's gunner, Corporal James Sullivan, doesn't hesitate. The 76mm barks. The shell hits the Panther's front glacis plate at a steep angle. It penetrates, not deeply, but enough to disable the vehicle. The Panther's crew bails out. Rizzo's infantry support secures the position. 6 months ago, we couldn't have done that, Sullivan says later. Not frontally, not at this range. The old 75 would have bounced right off. Rizzo nods. 6 months ago, we'd be dead. Now they're the ones running. The psychological shift is complete. American tank crews, once fatalistic about facing German armor, now approach engagements with confidence bordering on aggression. They trust their weapon, they understand its capabilities, and they've seen too many Panthers burning to believe in German invincibility anymore. German crews experience the opposite transformation, where once they approached battle certain of their superiority, now they fight with grim determination tinged with hopelessness. The Americans always have more tanks, more ammunition, more fuel, more everything, and now they have weapons that can match or exceed German range and penetration. It's not fair, but war isn't fair. By November, as autumn rains turn the landscape to mud, the front settles into a grinding, attritional struggle. The 76mm Sherman has become ubiquitous in American armored divisions. New crews train on it from the start. Old crews have either adapted or been replaced. The weapon has been fully integrated into American tactical doctrine. Captain Michael O'Brien, a company commander in the 2nd Armored Division, writes a report summarizing lessons learned. His analysis is blunt. The 76mm gun has equalized the battlefield. We can now engage German armor at ranges where their advantages in armor thickness and gun power are minimized. Combined with our superiority in numbers, air support, and logistics, this tips the balance decisively in our favor. German armor is no longer a decisive weapon, it's a speed bump. That assessment, while perhaps harsh, reflects reality on the ground.
The Panzer divisions that shattered France in 1940 and drove deep into Russia in 1941 are shadows of their former strength. Fuel shortages limit operations. Replacement tanks arrive sporadically, often crewed by undertrained teenagers. Allied air superiority makes movement a death sentence. And now, when they do engage American armor, they face weapons that can hurt them at ranges they once considered safe. The final proof comes in December, during Germany's last major offensive in the West. The Ardennes Offensive, later known as the Battle of the Bulge, throws everything remaining in the German armored reserve against a weakly held sector of the American line. For a moment, it seems like old times. Panthers and Tigers pouring through fog-shrouded forests, overrunning American positions, driving toward distant objectives. But the moment doesn't last. American forces, though surprised and pushed back, don't collapse. They hold key road junctions. They establish defensive positions. And when the fog lifts, allowing the 76mm Shermans to engage at distance, the German advance stalls. Near Bastogne, Staff Sergeant Raymond Tucker's platoon establishes positions on high ground, overlooking German approach routes. When Panther columns attempt to bypass the surrounded town, Tucker's crews engage from 1,400 meters. The lead Panthers burn. The column halts, trying to locate the source of fire. More shells rain down. German commanders, frustrated, try to push through. More tanks die. Eventually, the Germans retreat, leaving burning vehicles scattered across the snow. Tucker's platoon doesn't lose a single Sherman. They fought the battle entirely at range, never allowing the Panthers to close to distances where German advantages would matter.
This pattern repeats across the Ardennes. Wherever American armor can establish good firing positions with clear fields of view, the 76mm gun dominates. German tanks, operating with limited fuel and under constant air attack when weather clears, can't exploit their theoretical advantages. The offensive bleeds out in the snow, consuming Germany's last mobile reserves. After the Ardennes, the outcome is certain. It's just a matter of time. American and British forces close on the Rhine, while Soviet armies approach from the east. German industry, battered by strategic bombing, can barely produce ammunition, much less replacement tanks. The Panzer Force exists on paper, but lacks fuel, parts, trained crews, or realistic hope. In February 1945, Oberst Müller, still alive somehow, still commanding remnants of the 116th Panzer Division, receives orders to defend a Rhine crossing. His division consists of 9 operational tanks, down from over 100 when he took command. They're positioned in rubble-strewn streets, camouflaged among destroyed buildings, hoping for one last chance to delay the inevitable. The Americans cross the river on a captured bridge. Within hours, Shermans are pouring across. Müller's tanks engage from concealment, achieve some initial success. They knock out 3 Shermans at close range. But American infantry quickly locates their positions. Artillery rains down. More Shermans arrive, these equipped with the long 76mm barrels Müller has learned to fear. They engage from 800 meters, methodically destroying his camouflaged positions one by one. Müller's Tiger takes 2 hits before he orders evacuation. His crew escapes on foot as their tank burns. Of his 9 tanks, only 2 survive the day, retreating deeper into Germany with the flood of refugees and defeated soldiers. 3 days later, Müller surrenders to American forces. During his interrogation, an intelligence officer asks about his experience fighting Shermans. "At first, we didn't take them seriously," Müller admits. "Their tanks seemed inferior, their crews inexperienced. But they learned. God, how they learned. By the end, they knew our weaknesses better than we knew theirs. And that gun, the long-barreled one, we never expected Americans to hit us from such distances. It changed everything." The intelligence officer makes notes. Changed everything how? Müller considers the question.
It took away our confidence. When you know you can be killed from a mile away, that you're not safe even when the enemy seems distant, you stop acting like a predator. You start acting like prey. That's what happened to the Panzer Force. We became prey. When the war ends in May 1945, analysts begin studying what made the difference. Why did Germany, with supposedly superior tanks and veteran crews, lose the armored war? The answers are complex, involving logistics, air power, industrial capacity, strategic mistakes. But the 76mm gun represents something important in that analysis. It represents adaptation. The Americans recognized a deficiency, engineered a solution, produced it in quantity, and trained crews to exploit it, all within 18 months. That cycle of recognize, adapt, implement, iterate, that was America's decisive advantage. German tanks were individually superior in many ways, but superiority in isolation means nothing if you can't field enough of them, can't fuel them, can't support them with infantry and artillery, can't protect them from air attack, and can't replace them when destroyed. The Sherman with the 76mm gun was never the best tank of the war, but it was good enough, producible in massive quantities, reliable enough to keep running, and versatile enough to adapt to changing battlefield requirements. Good enough multiplied by 10,000 beats perfect multiplied by 100. For the men who fought in Shermans, the 76mm represented something simpler: survival. It meant they could fight German armor without suicide missions. It meant their skill and tactics could overcome enemy advantages in armor and firepower. It meant they had a chance. Billy Kowalski survives the war, returns to Chicago, works in his father's machine shop, never talks much about his service, but his family notices he instinctively calculates distances, estimates ranges, measures angles. Combat habits die hard. One day, in 1946, his nephew asks him about the war. "Did you really shoot a German tank from a mile away?" Billy considers the question. "Mile and a tenth, actually. But that's not the impressive part." "What was?" "The impressive part was that we figured out how to do it. Germans thought they had us beat, thought their tanks were untouchable. We proved them wrong, not because our equipment was better, but because we learned faster. That's how you win wars, not with the best weapon, but with the best system for improving weapons, for learning, for adapting." His nephew doesn't fully understand, but Billy doesn't elaborate. How do you explain to someone who wasn't there what it meant to finally have a weapon that gave you a fighting chance? How do you describe the relief, confidence, the transformation from victim to warrior? You can't. So Billy returns to his workbench, measuring and cutting metal, the skills of war applied to peacetime pursuits. But sometimes, when he sights down a piece of metal, checking alignment, he remembers a ridge in France, a clear August morning, and a shot that shouldn't have been possible, but was. The shot that proved American ingenuity could match German engineering. The shot that announced the Panzer's reign was ending. 1 mile, 1 shot, 1 moment when the balance shifted, when the hunted became the hunter, when the underdog proved that adaptation trumps perfection. That was the real victory. Not just defeating the enemy, but doing it by outlearning them, by improving faster, by refusing to accept limitations as permanent. The 76mm gun was just metal and chemistry, but what it represented, American industrial might, innovative thinking, rapid adaptation, and refusal to quit despite setbacks, that was what won the war. The Germans built better individual tanks, but America built a better war machine, one that could learn from failure and return stronger. And in the end, that made all the difference. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.